I actually see a lot of messages that cancel out the worthiness of fathers, the need for fathers, the importance of a father figure in children's lives.
Is it that we have been brainwashed and pre-programmed by the movies, The Simpsons, that has made men that way?
They have 2 children. They'll say, well, I have 3 children, including my husband. I think that's a faulty narrative. I think it's really worse than useless. We've also been inundated with this idea that if it's not salaried, then it's just free labor, and free labor means that you're just some kind of trapped poor little wifey. I've been the woman whose husband comes home at the end of the day and I say to him, you don't know what I've had to put up with, and you didn't change any diapers, and I was up all night, and I'm holding down my day job, and I'm supporting this family, and I cooked dinner, and I was up with a crying baby, and you're just sitting there on your phone. You know, we can't offer our kids breast milk, so we'll give them cocaine instead. I know this is an absolute shocking thing to say, but they are actually different. Sorry to let everyone know this. Trigger warning. But we are actually different.
Like I'm sitting with my sister here because we have a really special guest. I've been following this woman for over 7 years when I was having my first kid, and I really wanted to dive deep into parenting, and not any type of parenting, but conscious parenting. And so we have a mindful parenting coach with us here today. Her name is Avital. She's also a childhood designer, a mother, and she's dedicated to empowering intentional, imperfect parents like you and me, who faces chaos, clutter, and conflict. So through online tools to reclaim peace, presence, and play for your family. Welcome, Avital.
Thank you so much for having me, Morgan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm totally stoked, and we're gonna do something different today. I wanted to do something special for you, Avital, and that is get people up to speed with who you are with speed dating questions.
Okay. I haven't been on a date in about 20 years, so let's do it.
I know how it is. Let's go. So it's going to go fast. Are you ready?
I'll do my best.
Okay. Structured routine or go with the flow?
Structured routine.
Okay. Teaching through words or teaching through example?
Example.
Scheduled activities or free play?
Free play.
Praise effort or praise results?
Effort every single time.
All right. Morning cuddles or bedtime stories?
Ooh, I got to go with both. Both on that one. Yeah.
Legit. Respect. Indoor crafts or outdoor adventures?
Outdoor adventures. Ooh, I love indoor crafting, but if I could choose outdoor adventures, that would be the one.
Yeah. And on that note, like it was one of your podcasts when you said that you should go outside. It eases everything because kids can go nuts when you're inside for too long. So I'm doing it like religiously. I feel like the tension in my body that I've been inside for too long, and I can feel it in the kids. And I'm like, I never like being inside now. I cook more outdoors than I do indoors because of your tip there.
Amazing.
That's brilliant. They love it. Next question: family dinner table or picnic on the floor?
Dinner table.
Books or podcasts?
Ooh, at this point, podcasts. Yeah, I'm embarrassed to admit, a bit more of a podcast.
Yeah. It's a time thing. I'm also there.
yeah. I like reading, but hey, podcasts just take it for me at the moment.
Yeah, I totally understand. Dance parties or pillow fights?
Pillow fights.
Okay, cool.
Oh, but I also really like dance parties. No, I'm going to change my answer on that one. Sorry, dance parties.
Dance parties, all right. Yeah, they can last a little bit longer. And
yeah, no, I get into that more. Yeah, pillow fights, you can get a bit like chaotic. So
yeah. Someone hurt themselves. Yeah, you're thinking about the consequences.
So it ends in tears. That's your dance party. Yeah.
Almost always.
Exactly.
And the last one, dad jokes or serious talk?
Ooh, I'm quite serious when it comes to talks. So, but I like a good dad joke. Like, give me a good dad joke, and I'll run with that as well. So,
do you know any dad jokes?
No? Oh no, they're for dads. I'm a mom. You know, that's my husband.
I need to level up my dad joke game. It's totally off.
I think the whole point of dad jokes is that there's no leveling up. They just remain kind of
bad all the time
for your entire life. That's what
cool.
they're there for.
Yeah. True, true.
It's there to
So,
make everyone else look cool. It's really an act of service.
yeah. Totally agree. So let's begin with what was your personal journey that led to the parenting journey?
Okay. So I'll just mention that my company now has been rebranded. It's called High Fam. But it
Yes.
was the parenting junkie for about 6 or 7 years. So my personal journey actually began before I had children. I think unlike many mothers, I actually never had that fantasy and that urge and that I did not imagine myself as a mother. In fact, having kids seemed really scary to me. Parents seemed really exhausted to me and almost like, yeah, their kids are cute, but they're always just trying to like hand them off to someone else, escape from them. It seemed a lot like physical work all the time. And also my own mother, I think, felt quite hard done by being a mother. Like it was a big sacrifice of her career and of things that she may have wanted to do. And I was worried that I would feel a bit like a victim if I had kids. But ultimately, I kind of decided it more in a logical way than in an emotional way. And I realized that this was such a core human experience that I didn't want to give up on. But then also in a logical way, I thought, well, if I'm going to have kids, I have to learn how to have them and how to raise them in a way that doesn't feel like I'm a victim. And so I became very obsessed with learning about parenting, and I started reading parenting books, really by the dozens. Like I was reading a lot of parenting books, listening to everything I could get my hands on. And even before I became pregnant, during my pregnancy, I remember reading Chaim Ginott and then reading Dr. Laura Markham and Dr. Shefali Tsabari and all these different writers as my child was, as I was pregnant and my child was born. So that's how it started. And what I discovered was a lot of things that just weren't being spoken about, that like no one I knew kind of knew about. And so I started just summarizing those things on YouTube for people who didn't have the time and patience to wade through all these books and research. And I actually come from the world of design. I was a designer at the time. And eventually my design background started to cross-pollinate with all of this research that I was doing. And I started to kind of think about parenting and coaching parents and designing, our lifestyle with our children as a new and hybrid career for myself. So slowly, I became full-time in coaching in the parenting world. First under the Parenting Junkie, which was named that because I was just a junkie for all this learning. And now High Fam, which is all about helping people create a strong family culture.
Yeah, beautiful. And I can really tell that you have like that design background, because I really love like the new brand. And I got a little bit shocked, like the Parenting Junkie, because it's been with me for so many years. And then seeing High Fam on Spotify when I was like searching for it, I was like, whoa, something new is happening. But it was fun. It was cool. I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Yeah, rebrands are never the easiest thing, but it was definitely time.
Yeah. And because I'm a dad, and this podcast goes out to a lot of men, I would ask you to tell me about what do you see are like some of the struggles you see with the men trying to have like this conscious parenting approach.
Well, I think that the world has, or let's call it Western culture, or the culture that I'm embedded in and that I listen to and that I read, has actually, unfortunately, really kind of tragically become quite hostile to men and masculinity in general. I actually see a lot of messages that cancel out the worthiness of fathers, the need for fathers, the importance of a father figure in children's lives. And this is not to discount, the struggle of single moms, which is very real. And that is a demographic that is rising in a huge way. It is a real struggle, and it is this isn't to kind of poo-poo them or put them down in any way. But the reason it's so difficult to be a single mom is because fathers are so important, because fathers do play such a meaningful role in children's lives. And I say that because if you read, say, The Bernstein Bears, which is a popular children's book, or if you watch The Simpsons, or if you watch any romantic comedy, what you'll find is that the dad figure is often he's often characterized as useless, as clumsy. He doesn't know what's going on. The women are in control of the situation. He's often, got a temper on him, but he can't quite control it. He's almost painted, and women often talk this way, unfortunately. They'll talk about their, say they have 2 children. They'll say, well, I have 3 children, including my husband, right? And they'll, I mean, you've heard this
I don't
kind
like
of talk.
that. I don't like when I hear that.
I don't like it either. I think it's hugely disrespectful. It's funny. We can all take a joke. It's
Of
fine.
course.
But this has gone beyond a joke into a real cultural meme where it's become acceptable and even, it's just considered fine to discredit and disrespect dads. Now, contrast that to when I was growing up, certainly the generation before me, where fathers were a figure that you needed to respect. They had a certain aura of authority in the household, of leadership in the household, of cooperation and collaboration with the mother in the household. Like they together were the leaders of this household, and they set the tone and set the rules. And, he wasn't a kind of comical figure. He wasn't a ridiculous figure. He wasn't petty or seen as silly. And I think that that's to our great discredit and to our great loss that we've gone down that path. I think fathers are really necessary in children's lives, both girls and boys. And the conscious parenting movement, call it that. And I do have to admit that I've slightly slid away from that terminology because unfortunately it slid away from me, because conscious parenting and gentle parenting and peaceful parenting and all of those beautiful ideas, I think have suffered from something called concept creep, where the concept slowly changes and it's now become a lot closer to what I would call permissive parenting, which isn't a good parenting style. But say we went back to the core ideas of true, you would call it authoritative, peaceful parenting, where you're setting boundaries, where you're following through, etc. I think this is actually a very natural place for many men to land, right? Men, if they're, kind of in that typical masculine energy, they are goal-oriented, they are targeted, they're able to be logical, even in emotional situations. Often men bring that rough and tumble kind of risk to children that they need very much. They're willing to let their children, no, don't, sit back, relax, let him try, let him get hurt, let him climb up, let her fail. They're able to often, I think, withstand quite a lot more when it comes to their children. I'm just talking stereotypically here. Of course, each individual is different. I happen to be the parent in my relationship that withstands risk a lot better than my husband. But I know that on the whole, these are the types of things that men often bring to the table in their parenting. They also are often a lot more comfortable with just being an authority, with just saying, no, you'll get over it, move on, stop crying, let's go. And that lightness is something that unfortunately so many mothers today have been so almost brainwashed or indoctrinated in this ultra sensitive parenting style. But they would do well to allow a little bit more of that kind of chilled, laugh it off, shake it off, move on, masculine energy for their children, because children actually do need that. They don't need to be constantly fussed over. They don't need to be made into precious little fragile wallflowers. And so, yeah, basically, I'm a fan.
Yeah, and you're preaching to the choir here, but I would also like to unpack what is it about what men are doing that makes the women tell them that they are like the second child or the fourth child, that that they put them in that category. Is it that we have been brainwashed and pre-programmed by the movies, The Simpsons, and the stereotypes that has made men that way? Or is it like a perception that women have? Or what is it that they are seeing that makes them say that you're behaving like a child?
So that's a great question. And it kind of harks back to the ultimate nature versus nurture type of question. It's very hard, I think, for us to tease apart what is just, a more typically male behavior and temperament, right? Because men and women, I know this is an absolute shocking thing to say, but they are actually different. And they,
I love it.
there's a lot of overlap. Sorry to let everyone know this, trigger warning, but we
Trigger
are
warning.
actually different. Yeah. There's a lot of overlap. We're more similar than we are different, but there are differences, especially at the edges, right, of the graphs. And so there are some things that are just typically masculine temperaments, such as being lower in neuroticism and lower in negative energy, right? So you could look at that and think, okay, women are programmed because of our evolution, because of our vulnerable physical state where we could get pregnant and we would have to bear that child, etc. We're programmed to be a lot more tuned in to dangers, right? To be a lot more negative in our emotions. We also go through a much more intense hormonal cycle every month, and then with pregnancy and breastfeeding, etc. And so this level of being more anxious, more nervous, more tuned in and sensitive to a baby's cries, to a toddler's cues, to a child's feelings, that's kind of encoded in the female biology and chemistry. And then the male chemistry allows for a lot more of a steady, detached state, right? Where they're not going to be just as activated typically, right? And there's a lot of really interesting neurochemistry that goes into this. For example, men who do hold their newborns actually experience lowering in their level of testosterone. They actually increase oxytocin and some of those more female hormones as well. So we have a lot of overlap, but I'm just talking, again, in broad strokes generally. So there's, I think, some chemistry that lends itself to the differences between the sexes in how we parent. And then a mother might look at a father and say, why aren't you answering these cues? Why aren't you jumping when something's wrong? Why aren't you being worried and aware and scanning for risk? Like, you just let him climb up there, but you didn't even think to stand and catch him, right? You're like another child, right? And it just brings out the sense that you're somehow less mature or less capable or less responsible than she is, right? Similarly, she might be much more organized in thinking for the future. When's the nap going to be? I've got to bring the pacifier. I've got to bring the nappies. I've got to make sure, we're home in time for dinner. She might be more on it in terms of all the child rearing. And he's just laissez-faire, like, oh, well, we're just going for a hike. I don't need to think about all of that stuff. And so again, she's going to interpret that as you're like another child. So those are kind of some of the stereotypical things. And then I think there are some things that are more nurture, more cultural, right? I do think that we women have, well, all of us have been kind of really inundated in a glorification of women and the mental load that women apparently bear. And it's become a really sad, in my opinion, battle of the sexes in that regard, that women are constantly being beaten over the head with Instagram posts and TikTok reels and YouTube videos telling us that life is so unfair for us, that we don't have equality, that it's so unfair that I have to carry the child, that I have to breastfeed the child, that I'm the one getting up in the night, that I'm the one whose career is suffering because I took a maternity leave, that I'm the one who has to handle the stretch marks. And then I'm also the one who has to plan the birthday parties. And wow, it's just so unfair. I think that's a faulty narrative. I think it's really worse than useless. I think it's counterproductive and harmful to marriages and ultimately to children. But I think that's where that comes from, is that we're kind of trained to see ourselves as superior, it's the feminist idea that women need men like a fish needs a bicycle, right? In other words, not at all. That is literally in the water that we're drinking. And it doesn't really matter what country you're from, how conservative your home is, how traditional your home is. You are being brought up. Some feminist ideas are fantastic, but many of them are really not about empowering women or having equality, but rather about man-hating. And the idea that being a stay-at-home mom is lesser than, is inferior, that child caring or any free unpaid labor, like taking care of the people that you love, is somehow doesn't have value, is worthless. And those types of things, I think, worm their way into our heads and really disintegrate our relationship with members of the opposite sex. And as someone who has 4 incredible brothers, an incredible father, an incredible husband, and 4 amazing sons, you know, I'm not buying any of that. I think it's all, I think it's really counterproductive to our relationships and harmful to the individuals in our lives who aren't a gender, right? They aren't an entire sex. They're just these specific people that you choose to love and that you commit your life to. So I encourage all of us mothers to stop thinking about men as a group and start thinking about the individuals in our lives. And I personally would actually be quite offended if my husband kept saying, well, I have 5 children. No, make that 6. I also have my wife. I think that's a really rubbish thing to say, to be honest.
For sure, it is a rubbish thing to say. And while like you're preaching to the choir here, so I'm totally with you. But I'm also like thinking that if I would like replay what you just said about this to my wife, and we would like dissect everything you said here, and we would hear like everything that the woman is doing, and still not what is the man's role here. So what is he actually contributing to this? Because she's planning the birthday parties, she's planning the trip, she's planning what they're supposed to be dressed at when the winter is coming, she's buying the clothes on the Facebook Marketplace, yada yada yada, and like they're doing a lot. I totally agree.
Sure. Sorry, the reason I'm staying with what the woman is doing is because I just don't see a problem with that unless it's a problem for that particular couple. I think we're all adults. We all have free, thank God, like, wow, I'm personally so grateful that I live in a free society where I do have choice. I wasn't sold to my husband. I'm not a slave in my home. If I don't want to do all of that research and all of that mental load, I don't have to. Maybe no one will do it, but I don't have to do it. I'm making a choice and I own those choices. And so I think the mistake is to say, well, he should be doing the same as me. And I just, again, I know, you're from a really egalitarian society. The vast majority of societies are not egalitarian, do not have that kind of equality. And those of us who do should not be complaining about the fact that we make different choices than each other. In other words, my husband just happens to worry a lot more about our finances than I do. Are you going to tell me that's not mental load? Or am I just going to discredit his mental load and say, yeah, but I'm thinking about snacks and Wellington boots and family trips and birthday parties. You're just thinking about the finances. Like, what are you worried about, right? It's like we're so quick to discredit what men bring to the table. He's thinking about our physical security. Okay. I don't have to feel that if we were broken into or attacked, that I would be in charge of fighting the bad guy. That's something that he carries. Okay. I don't have to worry about, if our kid, God forbid, needs to run to the emergency room, who's gonna operate that. That's probably gonna be him. And I'm just saying all of this because if you want your partner to do those things, and by the way, often women don't. They often don't want the partner to do those things. As soon as he touches it, as soon as he tries, she's like, "You're doing it wrong. Just give it to me," right? It's just not real. I think it's a cry for attention. And I want to say, I think I've been there. I'm saying all of this with such confidence because I have been there. I've been the woman whose husband comes home at the end of the day and I say to him, "You don't know what I've had to put up with, and you didn't change any diapers, and I was up all night, and I'm holding down my day job, and I'm supporting this family, and I cooked dinner, and I was up with a crying baby, and you're just sitting there on your phone." I've been there. I've been in that resentful place. I do get it, and I do have empathy for it. I don't want it to sound like I don't. But I realized and understood deeply about myself that ultimately I was making choices and that I had to own it and be a responsible adult. And what I was really trying to say to my husband at the end of the day was, please, can you see me and recognize what I've done here? Please, can you just appreciate me? Please, can you tell me, babe, wow, you're such a queen. Thank you for managing our home so well. Or thank you for raising our children so beautifully. I'm challenged. I'm hard pressed. I coach thousands of parents from all over the world. I am hard pressed to find the woman who's complaining about mental load because she actually wants her husband to be the one to pack for the trip. She doesn't. She wants to do it herself. What she actually wants is for him to appreciate it. for him to acknowledge
Yeah.
it. And when he comes in and says, wow, thank you so much for packing everything. You thought of everything for this trip. You've just made it such a joy for us. Like, you're amazing. I could never do that. She's then satisfied. I'll just end with a quick little anecdote. I just coached one of my students in my marriage course, and she said exactly this. She said, my husband, is the primary earner, but I want to go out. I want to stop being a stay-at-home mom, and I want to go out and earn because I want him to be home with the kids. And I was like, okay. I mean, everyone's free to renegotiate their, the way they set up their home. I think we're building something. We have to pool our resources and our energy and our manpower and our hours and our money, and then, figure it out. Whoever's better at working outside the home, whoever's better at being, who cares? Great. And she's like, no, I don't really want to work outside the home. I just want him to see how difficult my job is. And I was like, why? She's like, I want him to know that he could never do it. I was like, okay, so you're willing to forego being a stay-at-home mom to go out and work just so that your husband can suffer at home and see how amazing you are. That's a really long way of saying to him, babe, I feel a bit underappreciated. I want you to note what I'm doing. I think that would be a quicker route.
I'm just laughing here. I just recognize myself and our own relationship within, it's like a textbook from our relationship. Like, I hope you realized how hard it was taking care of the kids. But the funny thing is, I'm doing it in a much more easy way. That is what I'm feeling. Instead of being inside, making everybody go nuts, just get the kids dressed. We go outside. Everybody has a peaceful and calm time, and nobody is worried about getting burned because we're doing a lot of fires. We're cooking outside on fires and really trying to get that wilderness going on with me and the kids. I love having the kids, and when I hear that complaint about well, you're away on work, you are meeting clients, you're eating lunches, you're going to business events, and you are sitting with your computer, you are having your own time during that time. But my feeling is that, but I am now I'm serving my clients, I'm holding up the energy when I'm doing seminars, when I'm doing speaking engagements, and when I'm whatever I do, I feel that I'm always locked on in service. So I feel that there's this balance, but I also see that what you're saying, that appreciation is at place here. And that is what's actually lacking. Because when I hear that from my wife, I say, okay, if you want to go work, you don't want to be at home, because she's been at home with the kids for 7 years now. I kiss her feet for everything she's doing. She really turns our house into a home. I could never do that. What I try to say what I'm appreciative about a lot, but maybe a lot is not enough. We should do it even more. But when I say, okay, you go ahead, you can go out and work, and I can take care of the kids. For me, it would be a vacation. Me and the kids? Are you kidding? We would have a blast. Bye-bye. So that was just a what do you call it? Just my side of what you're saying here.
Right. So I think a few things that the biggest mistake that we make as couples is discrediting the other person's contribution. The truth is that life is kind of hard, and life is also kind of fun. When you're living in a first world country with, and you're able to make a living and you're able to raise healthy children, those projects have challenges, and they have a lot of meaning and satisfaction. And whoever of the couple, the man or the woman, who is responsible for bringing home the bacon and answering for the finances, they're having some fun. They're having maybe some cool meetings, some cool conferences, some travel, just some interesting time online. Maybe they get a bit more time to go to the gym or just to be by themselves without people screaming and changing diapers. And yeah, there are perks. Of course, there are benefits to that role. And there's a huge mental load. There's a lot of stress that comes with being an entrepreneur or being an employee. And, and just knowing that you're managing all of that. There's bureaucracy, there's paperwork, there's all sorts of things that are not fun about those roles. And then the same is true for raising children. Raising children is easily one of the most meaningful and satisfying projects of anyone's life. They are fun and funny and cuddly, and they bring up so much pride and joy and so much love that most people don't get to experience on a day-to-day basis. The level of physical touch, snuggles, and sweetness, and again, that deep sense of meaning and connection and bondedness is amazing. Also, when you're with kids, you get to go on adventures, like you're saying. Okay, we're going to cook in the wild. We're going to go to the children's museum. It's fun. It's also really hard. It triggers you. It brings out your worst fears, your biggest guilt. You get mad and you yell because they're chaotic, and you're worried about them, and it's exhausting because it's 24/7 and it feels like it never ends. And you sometimes feel like you're a shadow of your former self because you're just reading stupid kids' books, and you can't put yourself together because they spit up on you the next minute. So each role has its pros and its minuses. And I just wish people were a bit more realistic about that, a bit more honest with themselves and with their partners, and also honest about which role we want to inhabit. Like, it's very easy to say, oh, it's easy for you, you're off working, or it's easy for you, you're home with the kids. What do you even know about keep holding down a job? It's so easy to discredit what the other person is bringing in. And I think that's the undoing of some really solid marriages. I think the opposite needs to be true, where we say, look, we're co-founders. We are co-founders, right? We've founded a family together. We're building something that's going to last. It's a legacy. It's a culture. We're literally creating the future, literally, more than any CEO can say. And so your contributions are amazing and needed, and my contributions are amazing and needed. And I get that you have hard sides of your job and I have hard sides of my job. We can be empathic to each other. We can be appreciative of each other. And we can also be honest and say, it took me a while to say, I actually don't want to trade with my husband. As difficult as my role might be as a mother, as difficult as pregnancy and labor and breastfeeding was, wouldn't trade with him for the world. Even if he could do it, I'm so happy that I got to do it. And so I think often women are saying those things like, oh, it's easy for you to just go off of work, because they feel that their role in the family maybe isn't appreciated and acknowledged enough. And we've also been inundated with this idea that if it's not salaried, then it's just free labor, and free labor means that you're just some kind of trapped, poor little wifey. And I think that's very disempowering and also disingenuous, given that we are choosing these things in a free society where you could choose otherwise. Like, the same women could decide to get a nanny and go out and work, or put their kids in daycare and go out and work. They could decide not to have children. They could decide. Most of the husbands would be very happy to switch places with them if they could earn the same, and if they can, God bless, go ahead. So, like, you've got to be honest about the fact that you're in a free society and you do have choices. And then it's about you make those choices and you pay the price graciously. There's a price to every lifestyle choice. There's a downside to every lifestyle choice. Just pay that price graciously with eyes wide open and like a mature adult.
Yeah, I love that. Like, everything has a price to pay. I heard that from Ido Portal for first time. Mm-hmm. And but on that, I would like us to go further on when you said, like, we are co-founders in this. I really love that metaphor, like that we are co-founders, which we are also, like, in my company. We are actual co-founders. Mm-hmm. But how do we meet, and what are the roles with these two co-founders? We can't do the same task. So what is what's lacking? You said, like, Homer Simpson and like what's in the media, what's in movies, what's in cartoons. Like, that is maybe not the image that we want to portray. And I think it's, like, really hard to go after something if I can't see an image of it. So what is the image that we can, like, have before us, in front of us, so we can have something to strive for? Because I really believe that when I can envision something, I can create it. It's easier for me, for my reticular activation system, like my missile in my mind, to just, like, go out and grasp whatever I need to achieve. So what is that vision? How are we co-founders?
Yeah. So it's funny, the first month in my membership, every single year, we revisit our vision crafting, right? And we craft our vision just like a CEO would for their business, for their company. And You're right. Representation matters. And when you see examples in culture or at home, it really does help. But we're also really creative individuals. We have the ability to imagine. We have the ability to envision. And I would encourage every parent, every co-parenting team, in fact, to spend time. And I think New Year's is a really classic time to do that, because that's a time of natural reflection that people usually take stock and think where they want to go in the future. I actually encourage an offsite, leave the kids with grandparents or with a babysitter and spend at least an afternoon, if not a full day and maybe a night away, where you have the time to just say, hey, where are we and where do we want to go, right? Are we living in the physical place that we want to live, in the physical house that we want to live? Have we built around us the type of community that we want to build? Are we educating our children with the types of skills and knowledge and values that we want for them? Are you and I each living our best life, right? I know this sounds like super privileged to have these conversations, but many people are in a position where they could, lift their eyes above the water for a moment and just cast a vision. Where would I like to be with you in 5 years, in 10 years? What does our grandparenthood look like? Okay, I think a lot about myself as a grandma. And I'm lucky because I have 3 older siblings who already are grandparents. And I have a grandma myself who's still alive, who's 101 years old. And so the intergenerational, relationships is something that I have a great model for in my life. But I think about it. I lift weights every single day. And the reason I do that is because I want to be able to lift my grandbabies. I want to be able to be helpful and I want to be active as a grandma. I think that's such a great, goal for me. So having those conversations about how can we tweak our life? Do we need to make major changes? Do we need to make minor changes? And this is why I say you can take responsibility for your role, because if you're not happy with it, you can actually change it. You can actually go out and get a job or quit your job. Or, most of us have a little bit of leeway. We live in a society where there are some opportunities and you could make different choices in your life. And I think that casting the vision for what, you specifically asked about men and what is men's role. And there are typical things that are more fatherly or more typically masculine, but I really leave that up to each individual couple to negotiate and figure out how we play to our strengths, and I think it needs to be a conversation, just like co-founders are thinking, okay, I'm really good in this area, you're really good in that area. I'm more forward facing. I like to lead the team and I'm happy making speeches and being the face of the company. You're more technical and organized, and you're going to be much more in the weeds of the product development. We have those conversations and then we renegotiate and regularly meet and figure out, are we stepping on each other's toes? Are we enhancing each other's work or undermining it? Ultimately, one of the big mistakes that couples get into is that they very quickly get into a power struggle. And we've all been there. The early years of marriage are really very, very challenging as you're in this power struggle and you're not yet in a place where you're enhancing each other and harmonizing and working towards a goal. And the idea is to move past the power struggle to a stage where we see that our incentives are 100% aligned. And that's just the truth, because me and my husband both want a fun and healthy lifestyle, financial success, a stable home, to raise our children to be great adults. His success is my success. So if he gets to go on a ski trip, or if I get to have a girls' night, that's not a tit for tat competition between us anymore, where I'm like, it's not fair. I did more parenting, you did more, I did more. It's not like that. No, the happier and healthier and more rested and more well-rounded he is, the better for our family. And same goes for me. So we're not counting and keeping score and tallying, right? And we do not care who brings in the money, who takes care of the children, who cooks the dinner, because all of these things just have to get done. And now it's just a question of who's more available, who has more time, who's better at this, who likes it more. Like in our house, we both cook dinners on and off. I do more cleaning because I care more about it and it's just something I pick up more, right? But he'll do more admin work and bureaucratic stuff. And he'll always teach the math. Every single time he's going to teach the math because I can't do that. I absolutely suck at that, right? And then I will always do the creative art projects because I'm good at that. So there are some things where it's divide and conquer. It's just like we're playing to our skill set. And there are some things where, hey, we're a team. Whoever can pick it up, picks it up. Whoever can do the laundry, does the laundry, right? And that's what works for us. We have friends who have a completely traditional marriage. She completely takes care of the homemaking. He completely takes care of the finances. They're very happy with that division. And other friends who have the opposite division of labor. And the point is, we're in a stage of the world where any division is allowed. You just need to own them, be honest about them, communicate them, and craft the vision for yourselves where you're being intentional so that you can really enjoy what you're building together.
Yeah, totally agree. And I've heard you speak about like the importance also of community, having people around, getting help. And one of our favorite books, me and my wife, we love the book Hunt, Gather, Parent. Have you read it?
Fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's really made me like just fall in love, I haven't even read a page. I just read it on the back of the book and I just fell in love with it directly when it said that 99.99% of the whole of human existence has not been like the nuclear family. So, and can you speak upon that? Because every time or every summer we go to my wife's mother's place where her sisters also have their cabins and they have children and we got our children and we have grandma there. And like, it feels like the easiest time of our lives. And it, like, because not everybody's cooking and everybody's doing like heavy labor or everybody's taking care of the kids. And it's just like, and it's just fluid. We don't have like these clear roles of who does what, or everybody's just playing to their strengths. So could you speak about like having a community?
Absolutely. So this is one of the great tragedies of our prosperous lifestyle and of our, our modern world, right? It's a beautiful thing and it's abundant and there's so much to be grateful for. Unfortunately, though, it's come with a pandemic of isolation, right? Where people are really very, very isolated. It starts with the fact that people no longer live in multi-generational living, right? They're not living near the grandparents anymore. It then goes to the fact that people are having less and less children. And so families themselves are smaller and smaller. People don't have that many uncles and aunts, don't have that many siblings to play with the children. And then even within that family unit, we're often talking about one parent and one child, right? So it becomes the smallest possible family unit of just two. And that's extremely common. So many of my students are raising children by themselves in that way. And it's really kind of a soul-crushing isolation, right? Where we are not built for that. We're absolutely 100% for sure, group animals, team animals. We're supposed to be in a tribe. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it really doesn't matter. It's not about the social niceties of it. It's about the dispersion of responsibility, where many of the things that you and I have just discussed about the big pressures on the woman and the big pressures on the man are actually, would be really eased and perhaps even disappeared altogether if there were just a bunch of adults, sharing responsibilities between them, watching over the kids and, gathering the food, etc. And some people still live like that. And in some ways, I live like that in the sense that we live in our nuclear family, me, my husband, and our 5 children, but we live walking distance from 2 sets of grandparents, from 3 sets of uncles and cousins and a broader family. And because we're observant Jews, we keep Sabbath. We don't drive on the Sabbath. So that's a time where everybody's just running around the neighborhood, walking to each other's homes, playing board games together, having meals together, actually breaking bread with no phones, with no screens, with no work. And so I get a little bit of a taste of what that's supposed to be like, And I think for so many people, you have that in your cabin over the summer, and it's a treasure, right? It's an absolute treasure. Really interesting chemistry that goes into this, which is that it's a huge stress reducer, right? So a lot of the things like you may have noticed that it's harder to fight with your partner when other people are around, right? You somehow develop,
Yeah.
it's harder to yell at your kids and get triggered when there are uncles and aunts or cousins or friends or grandmas in the room, right? We are just a lot better regulated. And that's because we mutually regulate each other. And so many of the challenges that we face as parents are challenges of animals in captivity, right? We're parenting in captivity because we're in these, these four walls. That's why one of the things that I can't easily say, go and live in a community and build community, although I say that too, absolutely. But I can easily say, get outside, right? That reduces stress, like you've discovered and like you're sharing. But also being with other people reduces stress. And it makes us better regulated. And so this is something that I would suggest, and I do teach this in my membership. This is one of the things also that we actually devote an entire quarter to this, right? To kinship, to friendship, and to influence. Because really tragically, the kids that are growing up today are going to get the vast majority of their community needs met digitally. And that is no form of prosthetic for the real thing, right? It's in some ways worse than having no community at all because it's such a toxic environment and it's definitely harmful to them. It's kind of like saying, well, we can't offer our kids breast milk, so we'll give them cocaine instead. Just, no. So that's, so what we really do have to do, and this is countercultural and this is challenging and this is difficult, but we have to actively pursue building meaningful relationships with people in our physical proximity. Yes, to extended family who live far away and we visit them and that's wonderful, but also you need people nearby you who you can raise your children alongside, who become like family, like your tribe, right? Who could drop their kids off at you, you can drop your kids off at them. You have whole family outings, you go hiking, you have a picnic, you do Thanksgiving together, whatever it is. Those are actually critical and they're non-negotiable. So for most parents, they think, I'm definitely going to teach my kid to read, right? That's a non-negotiable. I'm not just going to let them be analphabetic. I'm going to teach them literacy. And I think to the same extent is making sure that your kids have people in their lives that are invested in them, that are mentors to them, that are listening ears to them and to you, right? A support system for you. It's just as critical as teaching them reading and writing. And if you could bottle up the effects of having a community and sell it as a pill, you'd be a multi-billionaire because people who live in communities, we know this from studying the blue zones, which I'm sure you've heard of, right? They live longer, they're healthier, they're more active, just a million different benefits from it. And why wouldn't we want that for our children? So it's hard in modern day life, but it's possible. You open your doors, you host more, you have meals, you have parties, you have outings, you have hikes, you join a church, you join a community center, you join a book club, you go on a bike ride, you do things to foster those relationships. It's key.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like Sweden is probably like really known. I don't know how much you know about Sweden, but like the suicide rates here are like super high. And the feeling I get when like trying to build community, trying to invite people, I know that a lot of people that are also like into the more like alternative space, they are for unschooling, they are like more thinking about community, but when it comes to like actually creating it, it feels like there's some form of like invisible wall that stops them. Do you have like any ideas about why that is? Because I've been thinking about it. I have no clue why that is. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah. So I know what you mean. There's a barrier. When I lived in the US and in the UK, I think it's present there as well. The sense that you can be friendly and polite and even share experiences together, but it doesn't actually cross over into being more like close or relaxed or even like intimate in that friendship. And it certainly doesn't cross over into leaning on each other. Like, hey, I need help. Can you pop by? Right. That kind of thing, where you just feel free to ask for help and to offer help. And I think it's cultural. I think this is culturally learned because it goes kind of by region and by geography and by culture. There are much warmer cultures, which, by the way, are often correlate to warmer climates, it's interesting. I mean, I guess you could do quite a lot of interesting analysis of why that is, right? Are people just outdoors more? Are they more in a state of undress? Are they more at one in nature? Or, what is it that they're just less barriers between people in warmer cultures, where there are actually also a lot less boundaries, right? They'll walk into your bedroom, or they'll, share your toothbrush. Like, it's just something a lot more unboundaried about warmer cultures. And I live in Israel now, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of things that would be perceived as, and often really are, like rude for someone coming from the UK, like rude questions, intrusive questions. Hey, how much did you pay for that? Right? Or who did you vote for? And all these things that you're like, wait, whoa, I don't know you yet. How you roll up in my face, right? But the upside of that is that people are much more closer, and people are much more likely to, hold your baby for you, or, lend you something. And so there's a lot less boundaries than, say, I found in the UK and in the USA. And I would imagine that Sweden is similar. There are the typical kind of illnesses of individualistic, prosperous societies. And those are the suicide rates you're talking about, anxiety, depression, right? All of those kind of mental health issues that go along with the isolation and with the individualism. And one of the things that we're taught in societies like that is that you are here on this earth to be happy. That is the goal that we're supposed to raise our children. You got to just raise your kids to be happy. I don't care about anything as long as they're happy. And I think that goal has backfired spectacularly. It's not a good goal. It's not a good goal, and it's not working. Even if it was a good goal, we're not achieving that by telling children to just pursue their own pleasures and their own happiness and their own joy. It doesn't lead to meaningful connection, and it does lead to this barrier that you're talking about, and then eventually down the road to a sense of anxiety and desperation. And I think teaching kids, what can you contribute to others? What do you have to give, right? Don't worry so much about what you have to take. Don't worry so much about how it makes you feel, right? This is a huge mistake in the parenting community, is we're always talking about our children's feelings. And how did that make you feel? And did you like it? Did you not like it? Or what do you feel about it? And that extreme focus on myself causes a tremendous fragility, where I'm conditioned to think that my emotional state is everything, and that I'm almost helpless to change it. And it would be much more of service to children, like you were talking about being in service in your job, right? It would be more of service to teach them to be of service. What do you have to give? In the Hunt Gather parent book, one of the key things she takes from, and I had my Clean Dukloff on my show, she's fantastic, is that in these other communities, they're busy showing children how they can contribute. From the youngest of ages, the age of 2, you can hold this, you can snap that, you can cut this, you can carry that, you can wait, right? They're all things that they can do for others. And that gives them a sense of purpose and meaning and self-sacrifice and being part of something, belonging to something. And you asked me, how can we overcome that barrier? And I think that is a little bit of a crack, a little bit of a wedge that we can get our foot in the door to real connection. And here's my hack that I tell people. It's not easy, but it's very effective. Asking other people for help with something is a way of breaking down that boundary. We all have a deep-seated internal motivation for reciprocity and for being of service to others. And I think if you're stuck in that lifestyle that's very much focused on just me and my comfort zone and staying in my comfort zone, I never get that meaningful satisfaction of giving to another person. And it's not easy to ask for help, but when you ask someone for help, they immediately feel a sense of connection to you, like they're important to you, like they are useful to you, they matter to you. And their reciprocity is turned on, so they'll be more likely to receive that help from you as well. And I would encourage in the community building challenge to see if that's something that you can, can you ask people, hey, I would love to take my wife away this week, this Sunday. Would it be okay if the kids came with you to the park for an hour in the morning and we went out to a restaurant, and then we could do the same for you the next week? That type of thing where we're asking for help and receiving help. It's something that knits people together, right? It bonds us. And I think that works quite well.
A quick one on this topic. Have you ever like connected with somebody and then felt like, okay, their values are like really off, or I feel that our kids get like really bad behavior after being like with those boys or girls? Have you ever like encountered that, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, of course I have. So it's a balance here, like most things in life. We said there are pros and cons to everything, and the same is true of all friendships. And I think we have to weigh out, do the pros outweigh the cons? Can I pay the price graciously? If I, prep my kids, or if I bring a soccer ball, or if we do TV time during that time, can I offset it? Is it worth it? You always have to think about with relationships, okay, there's all the benefits I get. Wonderful. Then there's the prices that I have to pay. Like my kids are having a bad influence, or, oh no, these people gossip all the time, or something that I don't like about the interaction, right? And then the question is, okay, A, can I pay the price graciously? Is it worth paying? And can I offset the price, right? Is there a way for me to say, okay, but if I drive it in a different direction, like for some people, for example, with grandparents, they'll be like, oh, whenever we're in their house, they're breaking out too much sugar and I hate that. And it's like, okay, could you host them in your house? Could you meet on neutral turf and you bring the snacks? Like sometimes you can offset those things. There are times when you're just saying, you know what, this is not for us. And that's okay with
it's not
friendships.
worth it.
Yeah, that's okay with friendships. With family, that's more complicated. But with friendships, it's okay to just kind of let that fizzle out. But if you become too picky, you're never going to have any friends, because you won't find the friends that are a perfect match for every member of the family, right? And so it's a balance between kind of accepting the diversity of people, and then not everyone's going to agree with us on everything. And like, for example, you could have friends who have polar opposite opinions from you, but it challenges you in a fun way. Like everybody enjoys the debate, everybody's mutually respectful, and it works, right? And you can have friends that have the exact same opinions as you, but you find them just jarring or unpleasant, or, just rude to be around. So again, it's just evaluating those things and then seeing, can I make this relationship work in some, with some shortcuts or with some band-aids in some places.
Thank you for giving like the nuances around that. I've been thinking about that. Not a lot, but like, because we are striving to do something else. We are like leaving Sweden. We are moving to Portugal. We are looking around now. I'm hosting this in my caravan at the moment, not in my regular studio. And so we are like looking for, it's not always like 100% like-minded individual, but where health is important, where being out in nature is important, and where community is important. So there are some things that are like non-negotiable, and we want to stick with that because we are really, I wouldn't say like concerned, but we are really mindful about what we want for our children, and we can see in them like quite quickly what influences them in a good way and a bad way. And that's a whole nother discussion, what is good and what is bad, but that is like our own opinion. So, but I see like the time with you is just flying and we are like coming to an end, but I just want one last question. And that is, you said something about something before about the non-negotiables, like reading, for example. I have a non-negotiable that is, I must teach my kids martial arts. They need to be able to defend themselves. And I've been wrestling with them, doing jiu-jitsu, judo, even like some MMA, because I'm self-trained in those sports. And maybe they are too small to do these sports, but like we're doing it in a fun way. He hasn't hurt anybody yet. My soon 8-year-old boy, he's really sweet. But he's a real boy also. And the other one is like business, also like some like personal development things on like how to just like regulate yourself. But I also heard, like, now I'm just like sidetracking about like regulation. Sorry for that, but that I heard this from my nephew, that kids in a really small age, like maybe like underneath 5 or even like, I don't know which age, but they can't self-regulate their emotions. So they need the parent to be calm, so they can like teach themselves to regulate themselves. So be in an environment where I can be calm and that we can regulate the. Those are like some of our non-negotiables. And I'm really curious about what are your and your husband's non-negotiables for your kids.
Oh, wow. So first of all, I love your non-negotiables. My two eldest children are also in martial arts, and they have been for several years. They did judo, they do jeet kune do now regularly. I did aikido for a few years. I think it's so great. And I agree, like with the idea of teaching them business skills and self-regulation is important, and all of that stuff. So that's all great. For us, I think one of the big non-negotiables is and it's interesting because often non-negotiables come down to, and you alluded to this, things that you're going to teach your kids, that you're not leaving it up to the school system, you're not leaving it up to society. You're going to make sure they get this, you know. And I think one of the things for me is critical thinking skills, and a moral code. So I think that in modern day and age, we've become really squeamish and uncomfortable telling kids what's wrong and what's right, what's good and what's evil. We're really uncomfortable. I bet even just me saying those words can make you feel a bit uncomfortable, make listeners feel a bit uncomfortable. Like, people aren't happy with any kind of moral judgment, and judgment itself has become like a big, you know, sin almost. Like, you can't judge anyone. You mustn't judge. You're being judgy. It's so terrible. And I used to feel that way. And seeing what I've seen, you know, over the last few years, I feel that we've gone way off the deep end in not giving them any of the skills to discern right from wrong. I think there's a lot to be said for relativism, for sure. But ultimately, I do want my kids to know that there are some absolute moralities. You know, slavery is always wrong. You know, there are some things that are just always wrong, and that they need to be able to articulate that, be able to stand up to, you know, to evil or to bad ideas, to parasitical ideas, to tyrannical ideas, to bigoted ideas. And those are the types of things I want them to understand why they're saying the things they're saying, or why they believe the things they're saying, and be able to defend their opinions. So critical thinking and a moral compass are two things that are non-negotiable for me. There are lots of things that are kind of non-negotiable, but just like a big part of our lifestyle, which are health and wellness, fitness, you know, being in touch with your body, taking care of your body, building muscle, building flexibility. Those types of things are really, really important to us. And community and relationships with others. So I think a lot of people, again, with the squeamishness about good and evil, a lot of parents feel uncomfortable. You know, I recently heard someone I really respect say on a podcast, like, I would never tell my child what to think and believe. I would never tell my child how to live their life. And I absolutely tell my children how I think they should live their life, what I think a good lifestyle is. For example, I'm not embarrassed or apologetic to say that I would really encourage my children to get married. Not to anyone, you know, not under any circumstances, not when they're like 16, but I want for them to get married because I think that's a good lifestyle choice for those who can do it, right? It's not a privilege that everybody gets, but if they can, I would strive for that. And the reason I am comfortable saying these kinds of things to my kids, like, I think you should have kids. I think you should start a business. I think you should travel the world. I think you should align with a community, and that might be religious based, even if you're not a big believer. Be part of a synagogue, go to a church, go to a mosque, because it will give you something that is needed in this world, right? There are certain things that I feel comfortable saying to them, not from a preachy place. I'm not trying to and I'm not going to disown them if they don't do these things. But here's what I feel. I feel that if I make $1 million and I don't share any of that with my kids, that's unnatural. That's against the natural order. We want to share our abundance with our children. If I make a delicious meal and I don't share, I'm like, no, you go make your own meal. You should find out your own, who to share my meal with you. You should just make your meal. It doesn't make sense to me that I have worked my entire life and decoded things that are healthy, things that are good, things that are worthwhile, lifestyles that are ethical or that bring about a certain sense of self-confidence and joy and purpose and meaning. and I wouldn't give them that inheritance. Why would I withhold that? It's my $1 million. I'm not sharing it with you. It's like, this is valuable stuff. You have wisdom. You have gained it through hard work and through luck and through inheritance. And I think we owe that to our children. So I am a very proactive guide to my children. I'm not forcing it, but I want them to know that I won't withhold wisdom that I have hard earned, and that there are better and worse choices to make in their lives. You know, they're not always going to have the privileges of making good choices, and they're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. But it's better to try to make better choices. And so I want to help them to do that. And that's a bit of a non-negotiable for me, is that giving them that life guidance, right? Which I think a lot of parents today feel really uncomfortable with.
That's so refreshing. And I just love everything you say about that, because, I love also like your non-dogmatic approach, because I've been listening to your podcast for so many, like you are also like open with what you're not doing like correctly or as you wish. Like, we are all here trying to be good parents. And I'm thinking, and I sometimes like put that pressure on myself. Okay, I should be like super conscious, super aware, super present here, and not beating yourself up too much. Like, your podcast like really helped me to just like relax a little bit with all the parenting that's going on. And I like, if there's one parenting podcast you should listen to, I always suggest that they go to now Hi Fam, not the Parenting Junkie. And I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all the work you have done.
Thank you so much, Morgan. It's been such fun to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, and where can people find you?
I'm at highfam.com and at highfamlife on YouTube and on Instagram and on all the usual suspects.
Yeah, totally recommend the YouTube channel. You got great YouTube skills, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. It did not come naturally, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're really good. I've seen the evolution.
Exactly. It's a work in progress.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Morgan.
Say hi to the fam.